Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 20 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders with their cybersecurity strategies and solutions. With me on today's show are Brigadier General Hewitt, J3 Deputy Director of Current Operations, U.S. Cyber Command. Brigadier General Wisniewski, Mobile Assistant to the ARC Cyber Commander General, U.S. Army Cyber. Dr. Greg Edwards, Chief Information Security Officer at FEMA. Karan Sandhi, Chief Technology Officer, Trellix Public Sector. Lamont Copeland, Senior Director, Federal Solutions Architecture, Verizon. And Robert Sheldon, Senior Director of Public Policy and Strategy at CrowdStrike. We are talking about cybersecurity. General Hewitt, we're going to start with you. A lot going on over there, and maybe you can give us a top line of U.S. Cyber Command and sort of the responsibility area that you have there. I see you all are going big on AI, and I think you've been over there about a little bit less than a year, right? About 3/4 of a year, if I recall. So give us a state of the state as to what's happening in your domain.
It is very, very busy. You're right. I've been there a little less than a year. During that time that I've been there, really an unprecedented amount of activity. I have been at subordinate headquarters and operational units working for Cyber Command for the last 5 or 6 years. And I only see an uptick in activity from adversaries and malicious cyber actors as they advance their tradecraft and their TTPs. Since I've been at Cyber Command, the level of maturation that I've seen has been pretty remarkable. The Department of Defense Information Network, is often touted as the biggest network, in the world. 3.5 million endpoints on any given day that we're charged with defending. And the way that it was organized and formed is really a patchwork of networks that are loosely affiliated, connected, that we don't necessarily control every single endpoint because I can't go and touch it every day. And so that maturation has led us to organize that network into essentially 45 sectors, which has allowed us speed for defense, right? And so, the way that we defend is by pushing orders out, by pushing tasks and actions that we need our subordinate commanders to take in order to defend the network. And before, where it would take an order, on any given day, 3 to 5 months to close. And by an order, I mean, hey, take an action, go patch a box, go patch against a vulnerability. We're able to do it at speed now. And so that's been pretty remarkable to see. The other area that I've seen us really grow is through partnerships. And that's really our asynchronous advantage, I believe, at Cyber Command, is the way that we are working with not just industry, but across our government, intergovernment partners, the FBI, other law enforcement agencies, allies and partners. We have a very large group of partners that we're working with on a daily basis. And that's a big difference from our adversaries who are not working with partners. They are working in stovepipes. And so it is really a collective defense where we're making all of us stronger. And so that's been fantastic. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is what I've seen over the last year or so that I've been in the job is how we're, so often we've been focused on the maneuver force, what we call the cyber mission force, or our defensive mobile teams, or CPTs, cyber protection teams. That's the defensive component of the cyber mission force. But there's a whole nother force that exists within the military and the Department of Defense in our NOCs and our SOCs that are about 300,000 people strong. We have been tapping into that force in order to make our everyday defense better, so that our mobile defensive force is not as taxed, and we're upping our game. So a lot of really great initiatives that I've seen over the last 12 months that I've been here.
Sounds like you've been incredibly busy and a fantastic force multiplier, tapping into the partner network, including all of the partners on this panel today. Brigadier General Wisniewski, I would imagine that you being one of several of the cyber commands underneath of the overall U.S. Cyber Command, that you're probably the largest and certainly have a lot of activity going on over there. Tell us sort of the state of the state and maybe how you interact with the U.S. Cyber Command at the Army Cyber Command, et cetera.
Yes, sir. And definitely appreciate the opportunity here. I think we're definitely one of the largest, I'd say, subordinate commands.
Hmm.
You had mentioned artificial intelligence early on, and General Hewitt had talked about some of the challenges. I'd say one of the big successes that we would highlight is again the Panoptic Junction AI prototype that was recently rolled out, and again that was led by Dr. Al Molenkoff, our Chief Science Officer, and the team there at Army Cyber. And what we're looking at with the scale and scope, as General Hewitt described, when you consider the adversary's evolution, living off the land, the goal of the prototype is really to um, focus along an automated way to interact with the enterprise mission assurance service and the EMAS there, and then leverage that in combination with cyber threat intelligence. So by doing that, we can begin to look at things at scale for both vulnerability management, risk management, and incident response. So one of the nice things, the prototype went well. It's been accepted by Cyber Command. Again, that collaboration between Army Cyber and Cyber Command, and it's actually going to be used in response to the AI executive order. So Cyber Command will lead that task, and then AR Cyber will be writing that report for them as you go forward. So that's one example, I think, of a lot of the collaboration between the organizations there.
Excellent. And absolutely a technology that is an incredible force multiplier for you and your command there. Dr. Edwards, you've been over there at FEMA for a little while. You've mopped the place up. Certainly, I would be remiss to not say that. I would say that's one of the most stellar CISO organizations out there at this point. And give us a top line as to what's the state of the state over there. You've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of hurricanes, a lot of fires.
Indeed. First, good morning, and it's a pleasure to join the Fed Exec Forum and this esteemed panel. Got to start with the mission, right? The mission of FEMA is, helping people before, during, and after disasters. We're very proud of that, and so we all carry that badge of honor, and we take it quite seriously. We're talking about cyber this morning, but at heart, we're all emergency managers, and so we try to see ourselves through that type of a lens. Like everyone, we're busy as well throughout the federal government, responding and helping recover from disasters. We have quite a number of joint field offices up and operational throughout the United States, its tribes and territories. Those go on for a number of years. And I raise that because in our business, we're delivering cybersecurity services, for emergency management purposes. And I like to talk about that from the standpoint of there's so much change going on throughout our enterprise. And there's the same in others, I understand that as well. But that change throughout our network really multiplies the challenge that we have in terms of, chasing those vulnerabilities and making sure patching and those types of things are occurring. And so we're focused on, making sure that we can deliver cyber at what I say the disaster's edge. Day to day, and thank you, Luke, we are very proud that we have a strong FISMA scorecard. And that's all about compliance, though. And my bosses remind me when I put that card up in front of them, well, Greg, you're compliant. You're meeting those 12 criteria, but are you secure? And then I have to harken back and say, you have to start.
Fair question.
You have to start somewhere. And so, we are solid in the compliance area for sure. And what that's allowing us to do is then look beyond, just the day-to-day duties because we reached that level of maturity. And I like that General Wisniewski's already introduced the cyber threat intelligence area because that's next for us. And we're chasing the vulnerabilities, and we will all continue to do that for as long as we're in this business. But we need to help ourselves focus a bit on, what really matters, where threats are really, really severe. And we think cyber threat intelligence will help us do that. And so we're building out our program in that regard. But it's all still, once again, you think about a disaster situation and the threat activity that's going on within that particular region or locality. We aren't on the front lines working directly with the mayors and governors, but we are coordinating, in that regard. And as General Hewitt said, coordination and collaboration and partnerships, that truly is what this business is all about in order to have success. And I'll talk more about some of the other initiatives, but that's the landscape that we're operating under today, and staying focused on, around those disasters, making sure that any threat actors, first, they don't touch the enterprise that we've extended there. And second, we're able to be a strong partner and coordinate with anyone who might find themselves, in an attack situation.
And we really appreciate the stellar response on all these disasters that are happening all over the country these days. Karan, speaking of cyber threat intelligence, I know that's one of Trellix's special sauces. And there's a whole bunch of activity going on across the landscape. You're really sitting in the catbird seat there because you get an opportunity to kind of see it all, right? So give us a state of state as to where you're, what you're seeing these days and discovering.
Yes, I mean, General Hewitt said it best. The reality is the sophistication of attacks are increasing. And obviously, as you probably all heard, the AI tooling is available both to the defenders and the attackers, right? So they can continue to evolve the way that they attack a network or go after their target. And they can have sophisticated tools that, for a long time, was really only available to people who had the technical know-how and had the knowledge to actually go after some of these big targets like the U.S. government or the banking industries. So I think top line is attacks are going to continue to increase, as General Hewitt mentioned. There's not going to be a slope headed downwards. But the good news is that the tooling and the technologies that vendors like us and of course colleagues like Robert here from CrowdStrike and others that we're bringing into the market are helping deal with a barrage of the noise, so that the higher priority events, that the ones that are really critical, the ones that really require the SOC's time, are actually being addressed. So what we're seeing is, thematically, the basics are finally being done correctly. As a practitioner for over 10 years at CIA as a cybersecurity professional, what I saw is that patching and vulnerability management was a painstaking exercise. But what you heard from Dr. Edwards, what you heard from General Hewitt and General Wazinski is they're finally addressing patch management, vulnerability management in a systematic way, so you get the basics correct, so that whenever you're putting monitoring and detection technologies on top to go after threat actors or look for evolving threats, you can actually address them, you can actually tackle them. If you don't do the basics correctly, the monitoring is just going to be noise. You're going to constantly get attacked by the same type of attack vector. You're going to constantly be dealing with cleanup exercises. So the good news is we've evolved from doing the basics. Now we're headed more towards advanced detection and response. The second thing that I wanted to kind of share with you that we're seeing with our customers is they know how to embrace the tooling to go after the things that are the most boring. I mean, these are simple terms here. Dealing with low-level alerts before was a big problem because attackers will typically come in and do reconnaissance activities, or they'll go in and stealthily try to position themselves in the environment before they do anything that's considered highly suspicious. So these low-level alerts were getting ignored by SOC managers before because they just simply didn't have time. General Hewitt said there's not enough people to go after all the things that you have to go after, right? Low-level alerts or high-level alerts. So what do? You prioritize the resources after the high-level alerts and use AI technologies to go after the noise, the boring exercises, the mundane activities, so that you can actually go out and do remediation activities, or better yet, you can actually go out and do things that humans are best at, which is either fighting the mission or focusing on going after forest fires, as Dr. Edwards just mentioned, and other mission critical activities. And then the last thing that I'll mention is maybe with an example, what we're seeing customers do is starting to learn that they don't really have to do all the steps that they were doing previously in terms of detecting a threat, remediating the vulnerabilities or the attacker's damage on the endpoint or on the network, or in their email environment. They can actually write automated scripts and use technologies like SOAR, security orchestration and response, to go do all these activities that previously you either had to hire experts for or train your staff for. And then lastly, I think reporting mechanisms, as you've heard consistently from the panel so far, are also being automated. So you're not spending time writing reports or collecting data points on your own to try to send, the right kind of data points up to the senior leadership. So the technology is there now.
Sure, a
Yeah.
lot of automation being instilled in these various tools that you're able to offer, so that they can focus on sort of Maslow's sort of up the value chain there. Lamont, how about at Verizon? You sort of, you start at sort of base level with the wireless technology. Maybe it's wireline technology. You're moving up the stack there. Give us a state of the state, because you're obviously all over the globe at this point. What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, thanks, Luke, and great to be here with everybody today. Yeah, we're continuing to be across the globe, helping our federal agencies with how we're connecting, how they're getting connection, but also being modernizing the networks and ensuring that they're able to get the data and things that they need to be able to complete their mission. And to protect that, you have to continue to modernize these networks. We're seeing a lot of really good work with not only the transition from TDM services into wireless services into all the different capabilities that are necessary to use this new technology for AI and other things. But I mean, those things are necessary. If you're not doing the modernization of these networks, you're not going to be able to leverage all these capabilities effectively without this newer technology to be able to protect yourselves and then be able to also drive the mission set. So what we're doing is, we're doing that doing the basics of getting the underlay network, the connectivity pieces to where they need to be today with these standards. And then we're going in and moving up that stack, as you're saying, Luke, and layering on the security. We're trying to build the security from the network itself, bringing in things like SD-WAN, bringing in SASE services, so that you're then protecting those end devices and end components, because the data profile that you're looking at today is not just sitting at the data centers or at the facilities, each one of the government facilities, but is moving closer and closer to the edge. So we're trying to be able to build this inherently into the network to be able to protect all that data. And then also attaching data security services to the end devices, to the tablets, to the phones, to ensure that we're protecting the end users and the data that's going across the landscape. And then
really
on that,
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say finally, after we do the protection of these things, we're then bringing in cyber risk tools to be able to understand where all the data is moving and how each one of the end users are touching this data, so that they can understand the profile of where everything is, because you can't protect everything unless you know where things are, know how your network's connected, know how the end users are attaching to the network, know how the devices are attaching to the network. So those are the things that we're working on from a Verizon standpoint.
Really appreciate that sort of bottom up, sort of focused approach on that. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about cybersecurity, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense. We're talking about state of state. Robert, I look at CrowdStrike and I think of SEAL Team 6, right? But that's not all you all do. You obviously do that and much more. Give us a top line as to what do you see out there?
Sure, thank you very much. So maybe a couple of things to mention off the top, just environmentally. The threat environment that we track and our visibility covers really a lot of entities in the public sector, both in the .mil space and in the .gov, as well as a lot of customers in the private sector. We're seeing a ton of threats really coming from all places, in particular from China, and all the stakeholders that we talk to across the board, from those customer sets plus policymakers and other stakeholders in the community, really focused on China in particular and the threats from there. There's been a lot of concern over targeting a critical infrastructure and telecommunications, and obviously all of us that focus on public sector missions are really concerned about continuity for those services. Another imperative, and this is something that's fairly common throughout time and space with public sector missions, is that people are concerned about efficiencies, and we've really seen a doubling down of that over the last number of months. People thinking about how can we get more serious about retiring legacy programs and bringing in new capabilities that will make everyone's job more straightforward to be able to meet those threats. So a few things that we find are most resonant right now, both from the standpoint of meeting those threats and also driving those efficiencies, are one, really getting serious about threat intelligence and threat hunting to make sure that you, as an operator, have the best perspective possible to see when a serious threat actor is targeting you, and have an informed set of decisions you can make about how to react to that, just based on the constraints within your specific mission set. And then also looking at protecting identities in a way which is much more sophisticated. Threat actors are increasingly leveraging identity-based attacks. They're moving away from the use of malware. They're compromising identities to get to key resources, exploiting those. So a lot of interest in new identity solutions. And then finally, just how to drive AI at some of these problems. So at CrowdStrike, we've been leveraging AI for 14 years from the standpoint of having ML-informed detections and prevention. But obviously, there's a lot of interest right now in LLMs and being able to make the use of cybersecurity tools that have a lot of sophisticated capabilities more accessible to people that might not have quite as much training, and just to make everyone's job easier to meet those threats.
Sure, and we appreciate the advanced technology to to combat these very bad actors. Brigadier General Wisniewski, let's talk about a specific program. I imagine you have several of them there at the Arc Cyber. Would you like to highlight one that you are working on or have completed that you want to bring to the attention of the listening audience?
Yes, sir. And I think it goes back to something Mr. Copeland had mentioned about the data ecosystem. So we've recently completed an Army Cyber data ecosystem effort under our Chief Technology Officer, Mr. Steve Rain. And to General Hewitt's point, this was a collaborative effort between our soldiers, civilians, our contractors, and outside organizations. But it's been able to provide us critical insight into our overall data rationalization efforts. And the nice part was, we kind of focused on 5 questions that we were looking for, and these included things like, what data does AR Cyber have? Where is the data going? What decisions are made with the data? Who uses the data? And then what are the data gaps? And in doing that, we've been able to really highlight some of the areas where we had concerns, particularly across synchronization of our different regional cyber centers. So out of that, we did a data tiger team that kind of went out, and this was focused on implementation of Schema 1 and a USEAM effort. So now we can do cross-sector queries that allow the defensive cyber operations folks to be much more streamlined, much more organized in terms of how they approach the hunt missions. So I think that's been one of our good success stories, and we're continuing to build on that as we go forward.
Sounds fantastic, and we really appreciate you highlighting the partnership as well. Karan, how about at Trellix? You have a lot of very interesting things that you all are doing across the public sector. How about highlighting one of them?
Yeah, sure. So what we've seen is, in terms of pattern, is a migration from on-prem technology over to cloud. So a lot of our customers are leveraging both the top secret cloud networks that are now offered by all the vendors like AWS, Google, and Microsoft. And they're saying, hey, we need to bring our security technology into those environments too. So we've invested a lot of resources into going after our IL5 and FedRAMP High, as well as the top secret certifications to bring our technologies inside those boundaries. So that's one. Two, we're starting to notice a sort of a predictable pattern, as Robert had mentioned, that there's interest in wanting to focus on threats that are going after your identity. So our customers are recognizing if that's where the threat actors are going, we need to do a better job of identifying those threat vectors and mitigating those risks. So we partnered with other technology companies, because we like to be friendly to third parties, to bring in that data around identity-based attacks and being able to remediate against it. And then I think the third big one is something that, Robert, me, and others have already highlighted, which is a move towards AI and automation to try to go after sort of these low-level alerts, the mundane activities, so they can focus more on either modernizing their IT environment or adding more kind of functional security activities like, hey, if I can move away resources from these mundane alert triaging activities or investigating specific threats, and the system can do the heavy lifting for me, then I can do a better rollout of two-factor authentication in my environment. Maybe I can roll out better training for phishing attacks and preventing phishing attacks from being successful. Hey, maybe I can go do a more strategic migration of old operating systems to a more modern and newer operating systems. So those are sort of the patterns of activities that we've seen in our customer environment.
And really appreciate the collaboration with the partner community there. I know the federal executives certainly appreciate that, including General Hewitt. Would you like to highlight a specific program that you all are focused on?
I'll highlight two. The first one that I'll highlight is taking advantage of our data. And so when you look across our networks, we have a host of cybersecurity tools, very familiar with the folks on the panel here and the capabilities that they have. But what we haven't done a good job in the past of is capitalizing on all of the data, all of the logging, all of the scanning that happens across our networks and being able to roll that up and federate it. And so we've worked on, we call it battle space awareness, right? But really what it is knowing your network, seeing a risk score down to the device by location so that we can decide where we want to focus our efforts, because one gap in security is a gap for everybody and just provides an opening that, adversaries can get in and pivot laterally to. But the problem that we've had is data standardization. And so, how do we make that data, in some kind of standard format so that we can utilize it, query it, and then connect all of the various BDPs that we have across the Department of Defense. So we've made great progress on that, and we're much better at seeing ourselves. The second thing I want to highlight is our Defend Forward mission. And so we will send our defensive national cyber protection teams into foreign countries to help partners and allies secure their networks. But the real benefit of that, there's a whole bunch of benefits that come out of that. One, just from a partnership capacity building perspective. But two, we get to see what our adversaries are doing in foreign networks. We get to see what their TTPs are. We get to see the malware that they're using, and we get to bring it back. And one example I'd like to highlight is a recent hunt forward that was completed in Ukraine, where we were able to bring back 24,000 indicators of compromise. 3,000 of those were unique. We were able to turn those back over to our industry partners, which were then able to generate patching and software fixes and push that out. So collectively securing the whole nation and not just, our foreign partners. And so the last piece to highlight out of that, though, is that we become a trusted partner of the United States and Cyber Command, where other countries are looking to us to help us secure their networks. And so that's a great outcome.
Interesting catch there on the double and triple benefits of doing that. So I certainly appreciate that. And I know our global partners do as well. Robert, how about at CrowdStrike? Give us a specific example of where you all are doing great things in one of these agencies or across the agencies.
Sure. I'd like to pick back up on something that General Hewitt just mentioned, which I think is really important and is sometimes overlooked. This concept of hunting forward, which has been such a success in the military environment due to the work of entities like Cybercom. It's so important because it creates a virtuous cycle for organizations that have significant visibility because they're large federated enterprises. It promotes the ability to be able to see different threats that are attacking you. But what's important to know is that threat actors recycle tools, they recycle TTPs, different concepts of operations when they're targeting different networks. So the broader visibility you can maintain, the more likely you are to be able to have some insight about, where an adversary is using one thing somewhere and then try to use it somewhere else over here or to target you. So for us, we're really proud to have a lot of visibility across the private sector, as I mentioned at the top, and also the .gov, so that when we are able to work with .mil partners, we have seen attacks that might target critical infrastructure entities in a foreign country or even small nonprofit advocacy or political groups that work in certain countries, because we know that the threat actors that are concerned about targeting our critical infrastructure and our military have also targeted those sorts of entities in the past because of perceived political imperatives. And it's not a mystery which countries are most interested in that sort of thing, right? It's the Chinas, it's the Russias, and then of course the Irans and the North Koreas. So being able to drive all that visibility from having that breadth of visibility is really very important. And then to be able to use the tools that I mentioned a moment ago, like AI and better protections for identity, to be able to make sure that those threats and that visibility that we have is really being applied in a targeted and focused way so that it can prevent a threat rather than just letting you know if something malicious happened, but the adversary is already inside behind the wire and off to the races. So those are the things that we're focused on now.
Super powerful, fusing that .mil, .gov, and critical infrastructure, et cetera, together to really perform some defensive tactics. So certainly do appreciate that. Dr. Edwards, you talked about sort of food, water, and shelter, getting your baseline together. You're going up Maslow's hierarchy. Give us an example of some of the interesting things that you all are focusing your attention on at this point.
Although, thank you very much. The one big one I'll mention is we're taking a defenders forward approach in
Nice.
2025. And hearing the other panel members, it's reassuring that perhaps we're moving in the right direction there after we've established our maturity. What I mean by defenders forward for FEMA, of course, we call them cybersecurity advisors, not the cyber protection team of our great United States Cyber Command. However, as we're sending cybersecurity advisors to the field, and remember that's where the disasters are occurring, and we've established a field office. Well, our federal coordinating officers are the leaders there. They're the executives responsible for coordinating activity, with the local state officials, and of course back throughout FEMA and the whole federal government. But they don't understand cyber, and so that's a gap, and we're closing that gap by putting our defenders forward to where we send, based upon the mission or based upon some threat intelligence, we send the cybersecurity advisors forward to be there and be that presence. But of course, what eyes do they have? They need the ability to be able to see threat activity, and we leverage some technologies to allow us to do that. And then more importantly, they need to be able to, the needle in the haystack. They need to be able to sift through all of the activity that might be occurring in that disaster area, and first see, does it target, the assets that we have, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are occurring within that area. Can they impact FEMA and our ability to be able to deliver the emergency management services that are there? And so that cybersecurity advisor program is our Defend Forward mission that we're moving forward with in FY25.
When I saw that, I thought, wow, what a brilliant move. And I read this article about how, benefit seekers on their worst day, their worst time of their lives, are getting their benefits hijacked. So really do appreciate you all doubling down there and thwarting those type of bad actors. Lamont, how about at Verizon? You want to give us an example of a highlight of a program that you're have implemented that would be of interest to our listening audience?
So one of the things that we're working on and continue to evolve through is knowing that the partnership, as General Hewitt said at the beginning, we're all partnered to be able to help protect the nation's networks, to protect the nation's data and what we're trying to do. But a lot of those things come with the tooling and capability. So we're talking about the AI, things we're going to be doing to evolve with that, have to be fit into a compliant environment. So one of the things that we're working through, we're actually proud of that we're building up right now, is with the move to everything going into the cloud, with the move of all these things, all the data that's going further and closer to the edge of the network, is building a management platform that is federally certified to be able to support all the tooling and capability and bringing in all the security aspects, so that we know that we're protecting not only the data that's going there, we're protecting those end users, but then we're also able to share in a compliant manner information back and forth into these dashboards that the government has, so that when they're getting network services from us, or any other partners that they have, we're able to correlate this data in this compliant GovCloud platform that we have, and then take that, share that information so that you're going to take action on those things, no matter where you are in the world, to be able to support the mission self it's today. So that's really what we're focused on right now, is building and pushing more and more of these tools and capabilities into these compliant environment, so that you can then have the information that's necessary to support the security mission, the emergency response mission, whatever it is that we're supporting on that day.
We appreciate the support across the spectrum. We're going to start talking about priorities. General Hewitt, I'm going to start with you. 2025 is amongst us. What is your priorities? What are your priorities for 2025?
Thanks. So I think Cyber Command's probably number one priority from General Hawk would be what we have coined Cyber Command 2.0. And so Cyber Command has been around for about 10 years. The way that the Cyber Mission Force is formed today was formed 10 years ago, as far as the makeup of offensive teams, defensive teams, and then the support teams, which are our intel and capability developer units. And so we built it based on a model coming out of the NSA that we thought was exactly what we needed at the time. 10 years have passed. We've learned 10 years of operational lessons. And so thanks to our partners in Congress and some recent NDAA reports that came out of the 2023 NDAA that kind of spurred us along, General Hawk is really focused in on taking a hard look at ourselves and figuring out, okay, with all of the lessons learned through 10 years of operational experience, what do we need to look like to be successful against our adversaries and be the best unit for our nation for the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're now at a point, thankfully, where we are, manned and trained to a basic level that allows us to essentially, we've finished all our general education requirements in college, and now we're moving into grad school. And General Hawk's focus has been on mastery now. So how do we take the operators that we have on our teams and make them masters? And some open source, or in an open hearing back in February in front of the China Select Committee, Director Ray from the FBI talked about how China, their cyber force outnumbers ours. Our cyber professionals 50-1. Well, wow. They may outnumber us 50-1, but by focusing on mastery, our one person is going to equal 50 of their operators. And so that's what General Hawk's focus on for 2025 is. He's built a concept of what he thinks with the team of experts, and now it's building an implementation plan to make that vision reality.
Delta Force of Cyber Command. I love it. I really do appreciate that 50-1 aspect, and that we're equipping them to take that on. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about cybersecurity strategies across DHS and DoD. We're talking about priorities. Robert, we're going to start with you at CrowdStrike. Number one priority in 2025 for you all.
So one thing that's been common for all of us, and really everyone who works in federal IT, is just the existence of these large federated networks that have a lot of different systems, a lot of different legacy infrastructure often. And really, from the defender's perspective, the main imperative is to get this cross-platform, continuous threat hunting capability. That requires having visibility, obviously, and it requires instrumenting those environments so that, as a defender, you can seek the adversary out across those large federated networks. And when you find them, to be able to root them out very quickly, and then hopefully to be able to share information back with other like-minded defenders about any new TTPs that might have come up in that process. So really the priority is working with customers so that they can achieve that visibility and they can perform really natively that cross-platform continuous threat hunt mission.
Appreciate that laser focus there. Dr. Edwards, what are your priorities for 2025? I know you talked about one that you all are focused on. You're looking forward. What other priorities?
Yeah, underneath that umbrella of Defenders Forward, the cybersecurity advisors are kind of the first pillar of that, having the skilled resources to move forward. But underpinning that then is zero trust. We still have a mandate and we're moving out religiously toward achieving a level of zero trust that we set for ourselves, and that's a maturity that will fit FEMA and it'll balance mission with risk. And so we're implementing capabilities now in terms of cloud network security. We call it cloud network security architecture, but it's allowing us to see the devices on our network that have give access to specifics to the data and all the communications that occurs throughout our network. And then finally, we really have to automate compliance and assessments. That business is, following old traditional processes. They do work, but we got to find a way to take the man out of the middle of that and automate. So we're able to more quickly create a lot of the documentation that is essential. But it's not the documents themselves, it's the data. That's what we're really interested in. And then the assessments area, that for us is our testing of those environments and then looking at the various controls from a management standpoint to be able to assess our security posture. That eats up a lot of our investment. And I'm looking for ways that we'll be able to, get a little bit more out of our investment by automating in those areas. Analytics, SOAR, orchestration, all of those capabilities fit underneath there. So those are our priorities for 25.
Sure, a lot of that baseline stuff, almost table stakes, but very time consuming and very important, certainly if you don't do it. So understand that and appreciate that. Lamont, Verizon, top priority 2025 for you all on the federal solutions architecture end.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. So besides continuing to evolve and modernize the networks and things of that nature, one of the things we want to make sure that we're working on is on the AI side is bringing and using the data sets that we have to be able to help defend the cyber defense of the nation. So we're building in more AI capabilities to be able to do more automation, do more threat detection across the board, and build that into insights that can be leveraged both by us and the government to protect the networks and the end users themselves today. So really leaning in on, not that we haven't been doing this over the past few years, because AI has just boomed over the past couple, but we've been doing this for the past 10, 20 years since AI has been around. But how do we then take that, build more of that, and leverage the data that we have to be able to then provide more insights, provide more actionable data, and work on that data to be able to then leverage the AI capabilities to do the automated protection and support the defenders on the end to protect each one of the end users and their enterprises today. So a lot of the data that passes through our networks, as you know, about 70% of the world's data passes through Verizon's networks. So we want to make sure that we're leveraging the insights that we have to help support each one of the cyber missions that we're talking about here today. And we're going to be bringing more tooling to be able to support that.
We certainly do appreciate that. That's a lot of data flowing through those pipes. So appreciate the double down focus there. General Wisniewski, a lot of moving parts going on over there at Arc Cyber. What is your focus for 2025, the priorities?
Yes, sir. I'd probably echo some of the other observations. For us, obviously AI continuing to push forward and collaborate with U.S. Cyber Command and our other service partners. The data rationalization efforts, all of that supports the what we're calling the Unified Network Initiative, where our portion, the Army's portion of the DoD Information Network, we're pulling all of that together. And I think Dr. Edwards mentioned zero trust. Again, that's a key focus for us. In addition to operational technology, more broadly, it's looking at leveraging not only our active component soldiers, but also our National Guard and our Army Reserve folks as well. We have a unique ability to tap into some very exquisite capabilities on the Reserve and National Guard side, and we're looking at things like setting up opportunities for them both in a mobilized and a non-mobilized status. A good example, going back to some of the partnership discussion earlier, is the National Guard State Partnership Program. That I think it dovetails nicely with a lot of the hunt forward operations and things that we're seeing Cyber Command and some of our sister services work on as well. So that'd be our focus areas as we look down the road.
Appreciate that, and the leveraging of the various state entities, National Guard, et cetera. That's a good catch there on a force multiplier. Karan, #1 priority for Trellix public sector in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a common theme on this panel. It's all about automation and AI, but I want your listeners to understand the context of why that is. I mean, in our world, it's a lot of data that you're dealing with, and there's not enough humans to tackle those. So the reason why all the panelists want to embrace AI and automation is we can't hire our way to solving this problem. So we need the tools to do the heavy lifting. We need the systems to do the heavy lifting. So, but for Trellix, it's really about moving this thing in stages. What we've done previously is we put point solutions in place. We've been very fortunate, very lucky. Some of the panel members here are using our email security product. Some are using our data forensics and threat hunting products on the endpoint. Some are also using our network and detection and response capability. So we're very lucky that we have telemetry from across the network. And we think the next evolution in the stage for our customers and our priority for 2025 is taking all that data that we've actually enabled for our customers, either from our technologies or a third party, and bring it to a single pane of glass. And moving, in our view, moving away from SIM. Some have coined it XDR, some have coined it next-gen SIM, but really it's all about taking all this telemetry, reducing the noise, focusing on the top alerts that really matter, and helping the SOC deal with the barrage of data that they're going to be tackling over the next decade.
Really do appreciate that focus on those advanced technologies. All right, we're going to wrap it up here, and we always like to ask this last question of paint a picture of the future not being that far out, 2 to 3 years tops. Robert, we're going to start with you at CrowdStrike. What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years from now?
Thanks. I think the main thing is just making sure that you have a uniform, high-level ability to defend whatever the platform is and whatever the size and distribution of the network. So there's so much increasing use at this point of mobile devices, IoT, cloud environments, and other non-traditional endpoints. So making sure that there's an ability to instrument those devices and then to be able to have sort of a next-gen SIEM capability or similar, so that you can be able to do threat hunting in a way that is really straightforward, feels native, and is organic and just easy to use for operators, and sometimes operators that don't even necessarily have 20 or 30 years of experience, people who have come into the mission set and can kind of quickly get oriented and quickly drive value.
Really do appreciate that, Lamont. How about at Verizon? Fast forward 2 to 3 years from now, you guys will be on rolling out 6G at that point. What's it going to look like from your perspective in securing those environments?
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to be, all the data is going to be moved so close to the edge. It's going to be, everything's going to be connected. And what's going to happen is you're going to have cyber defense, which is going to be, as General Hewitt was saying, very skilled Delta Force folks that are going to have a lot of insight, understanding, and information to be able to protect it from one person, to be able to support everything that's necessary to be able to protect. And a lot of that's going to be coming from a lot of the partnerships with industry and government working together, and all of us be able to provide the specific insights, so that it doesn't matter how close the data is to the edge and what connectivity pieces that there are. They will be ready to be able to support the mission of the day and protect all the citizens and the military themselves. So,
really do appreciate all that you all are doing. Karan, how about at Trellix? We're going to fast forward 2 to 3 years from now. What are you all going to be focusing your attention on? What's a demand signal looking like?
Yeah, I mean, the demand signal is focused on trying to get more efficiency around the SOC. And I think in my personal view, in 2, 3 years, you're going to see tier 1 roles sort of evolving into machines doing that work. So the initial, triaging of alerts, being able to do basic threat hunting activities, you're going to find a lot of the AI technologies are going to do that heavy lifting for you. And actually doing advanced remediation or doing some of the more advanced cleanup activities are where some of the, security experts are going to be focused on. The idea is to get rid of the mundane activities and focus more on the more sophisticated attacks and the more advanced skill set required. people, the advanced skill set that's required by people to go tackle issues.
Really do appreciate that. Dr. Edwards, we're fast forwarding 2 or 3 years from now. I'm part of the FEMA Corps, or maybe I'm one of the volunteers. I've gotten airdropped into one of these states that's burning to the ground. What am I going to see? What am I going to, you going to give me a device that's secure, or what are we looking at here?
Well, what we see, say we're 2 or 3 years into the future and we're looking back. What we want to be able to see is that there's resilience. Resilience has been instilled throughout our enterprise. And we define resilience in FEMA as being able to fight through, that diversity, that challenge, that issue that we know is gonna impact us. And so if you're dropped into a joint field office 3 years from now, you'd assume your position at that joint field office, and you would have great visibility of the surrounding environment, and you have some tools, technologies, and capabilities to allow you to identify, detect, protect, and respond, to any activity. And then secondly, I would say, it's not just about the tools and technologies. We really have to show, and I was really glad to hear Robert introduce drive value. So from a business perspective, there's resilience there, but there's a huge investment that's been made. In order to continue those investments, we need to be able to show every day and into the future, we need to be able to have demonstrated, and we can count, the business value and the outcomes that the technology has brought forward for us.
A lot of moving parts there. We really appreciate all the activity and, again, all the work that FEMA is doing to help those folks in their probably their worst day, I would imagine. We really do appreciate that. General Wisniewski, 2 to 3 years from now, a lot of moving parts there as we described with Arc Cyber. What will you all be focusing your attention on at that point in time, do you think?
I think, like many of the panelists have noted, for us, innovation is going to be critical to our ability to operate in sort of multiple warfighting domains, whether, it's going to be a complex, contested, congested environment. That's going to be innovation in tools and capabilities, as General Hewitt was talking about with Cyber Command 2.0, in formations and structures. So I think our focus as we go forward is really going to need to continue to push forward on new ideas, new efforts around that. I'd also argue that cyber could look at being a hybrid branch. In some ways, we want to start being much more involved in the acquisition side and the development side. So we ensure that the components, the systems, the applications, things coming into our environment already have the controls necessary, that interoperability. To that end, one of the key initiatives we'll have, and we're excited about, is the Army Cyber Command's technical and Innovation Center, the ARCIC, I think we're calling it, out of Augusta, Georgia, at the Georgia Cyber Center. That's going to be one of those collaborative areas where we're going to bring public and private folks together, academic institutions, research labs, things like that, to really focus on the types of things we're going to need to have as we look down the road.
I really do appreciate you bringing up the secure by design, something that Director Easterly always pointed out. I think that's a really important call out there for the community in general to make sure we're not doing it to ourselves, so to speak. You all have plenty of things that you need to focus your attention on, and self-inflicting sort of wounds, if you will, using some of these capabilities is not one of the areas that I know you want to divert your attention to. So we really do appreciate you highlighting that. Brigadier General Hewitt, take us home here. And, if you look 2 to 3 years down the road here, you're interconnecting as you pointed out, the largest network in the world. You're interacting with all these different cyber commands inside of DoD. You're doing a ton of work apparently across the globe, which is outstanding, working with these various partners, et cetera. Give us a top line. 2 to 3 years from now, what would you be focusing your attention on, assuming you're in that role? Maybe you're promoted to the director. Who knows?
I hope not. I hope I'm not here 2 to 3 years from now. Hey, so I think if we look back, if we're 3 years from now and we're looking back to this time, I think the thing that we would think is, wow, we are really slow to discover exploitation and adversary activity across our network. I'm really excited about the investment, both in people and in resources, for the artificial intelligence task force that we have in Cyber Command. The AI task force is harnessing a whole bunch of pilot activities that are happening across all of DoD in the cybersecurity arena, and then figuring out which ones are best of breeds and where are we going to invest. And so we've got a lot of exciting opportunity that's happening. Panoptic Junction that General Wisniewski talked about, that's one that the Army's focusing on. But really why this is important, and I'll give you a real world example of it, is when you're talking about living off the land techniques. And so take one of the Typhoon actors, Salt, Volt, Flax, you pick a Typhoon. Signature-based defensive censoring is not going to detect the activities that they're conducting across your networks. They're using, they look like an ordinary user, an ordinary system administrator, and they're pivoting, inside your network, exploiting data, and you need a better way to find them. And that's where artificial intelligence, I think, 2 to 3 years from now is going to help us. And so, how do I detect, Jim Hewitt, who is an authorized user on a network, doing something that's outside of his behavioral pattern, analyzing millions of log entries? A human can't really do that, and it's going to take forever to find it. I need artificial intelligence to tell me, to cue me on that. Right now, that's still a big lift. 3 years from now, I think it'll be automatic. And then, so that's going to stop a lot of these living off the land techniques, because we're going to be able to catch, unauthorized users masquerading as authorized users across the network and make ourselves a lot more secure.
I really do appreciate that, and thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules and doing what you do to keep this country safe. I'd like to thank all the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.